Hello, friends, and welcome to Load of Crock. I don't know if any of you saw this recipe that was kind of going around like crazy. It was the tomato basil penne with feta, tomato basil feta penne, probably is what it's called. I saw the recipe a lot and I kept seeing it done in an oven, but I didn't see it anywhere being done in a crock pot. And I really enjoy taking recipes that are oven recipes and figuring out how to perfect them in a crock pot. Yes, I know what you're thinking. Get a life. And I will, I promise, sometime soon. But for now, in the meantime, we're going to do a tomato feta penne in the crock pot. All right, friends, so some of you probably know this, but after I had seen this recipe in a lot of different places and then was trying it in the crock pot, I heard or read or saw somewhere that it was actually like a Tik Tok sensation, like somebody had done it on TikTok. I'm not on TikTok, shocker. But I thought that was interesting because then I started thinking, well, what if we did something like a little spin-off called like Load of Tock, where while you're making your crockpot recipes, there's like a dance associated with it or like some sort of like voiceover that you could like do, like that you do on TikTok. I know, I feel really lame. Like we talked about me getting a life and I feel like we need to talk more about that. Anyway, this recipe is perfect for anyone who is maybe wondering what to do with some of the last harvest from your garden with the tomatoes and the basil, or maybe for anybody who has like a slight obsession with basil. Or you just really like tomato, basil, and feta. This is amazing. And I did it a few times to kind of figure out some of the best practices. So I'm going to show you putting this together in the crock pot. It is super easy. I think the hardest part probably is mixing it up with the tomatoes to make sure they don't splash all over you, which we'll talk about. But watch me throw this together and then we'll come back and I'll share just a few tips and tricks that I learned along the way. For this recipe, you'll need tomatoes, basil, penne, feta, and olive oil. Get out your crock pot and spray the sides and the bottom, and then add in your block of feta cheese. Then add in the tomatoes. After this, I did a dry herb mix of thyme, oregano, and rosemary, but completely optional. And then I added in the 1 to 2 tablespoons of olive oil. Also, add some salt and pepper to taste. Put your crock pot on low for 1.5 hours, and when it's done, mix the tomato and feta together until the feta is very well mixed in. Then you'll want to grab your cooked penne noodles, adding it to the mixture. Give it a good mix, making sure the noodles are nicely coated with the feta and tomato. And finally, you'll want to add in some cut up fresh basil. Once you have this in, you'll want to give it one last good mix. So as you saw, pretty simple to put together. I mean, it's nearly identical. If you've seen the oven one or if you've done the oven one, it's nearly identical to that. It's just in the crock pot. So it's just in there a little bit longer so you can maybe have time to do something cool like, I don't know, like some dances on TikTok. Sorry, I can't let it go. Anyway, so here are the tips that I would say. So you guys saw when I mix it up, obviously we fast forward and we do it really fast. Mixing up the feta with the tomato, I mean, it took me a good couple of minutes because, you know, you want to make sure the tomatoes are done well enough that they break easily or they maybe have already popped. But they still tend to splash a little bit. So it's a nice slow mix is what I would recommend for that. So it's not splashing on you. Also, as I noted, I did it a couple of times and in the overhead that you saw, I used a flat wooden, I don't know what it is. It's not even like a spoon. It's just like a flat wooden thing, utensil in the kitchen. Seriously, I probably should know what it is. And I use that because I could actually smash some of the tomatoes down nicely without them squirting. So there's an idea right there, but probably isn't not been heard of. Anyway, so those are my tips, really nothing monumental, but really making sure that mix up is slow. And some people like the chunks of tomatoes in there, so you don't have to do a ton of mixing. It's more to get the feta in. But some people, I won't name any names. They live in this house. They're not big tomato fans. And so I tried really hard to really get it mixed really well together so there were less tomato chunks. So somewhere in between, I guess, is probably where everyone would be happy. So those are the things that I learned along the way. Then, as you saw, I added in the pasta, mixed that all up, and then put some basil in it as well. And then I garnished it with some shredded parm, and it is so good. And I'll tell you, next day, arguably maybe better. I'm just saying, it's one of those that after all the juices soak in, it's super, super good. So thanks to all of you that are subscribed and watching this Load of Crock channel. I hope you really enjoyed this Load of Tock. I'm just kidding. I don't think that's going to get a lot of momentum, but I mean, if it does, all the better. But if not, I do understand. And hopefully you guys will try this Crockpot recipe too. Leave some comments. I'd love to hear if you have done the oven one versus this one, if you feel like one is better than the other. I have not done the oven one, so I would be interested to know. So thank you all for watching and for subscribing. If you aren't subscribed to this Load of Crock channel, we'd love to have you. We have some really great fall and winter end of the year recipes coming up. So all you have to do is click on the little bell. And that way then you will also be reminded of every time that we post a new recipe. And finally, I want to remind everybody, all of our recipes, including the various tips, substitutions, etc., they can be found on our website. That is myloadofcrock.com. So go ahead, leave some comments on what your thoughts are on a Load of Tock where we dance or do voiceovers while we make a Crockpot dish. And then in the meantime, go ahead and check out the apparent TikTok sensation, tomato feta penne in the Crock.